Hello, I'm Jashikins, and welcome to another episode of Jash Reads. This time of the 7th chapter from Animorphs #1 Invasion by K.A. Applegate. Somehow I made it home. I don't know how. I have no memories of anything after that last sight of the Hork-Bajir. I wish I had no memories of anything that happened that night. If only I could forget it all. I called around to the others. Everyone was shaky, but they were all alive. Rachel kept trying to apologize for leaving me. Marco just kept asking me if I was sure this wasn't a dream. I guess I should have had the worst nightmares of my life that night. But I didn't. The world of nightmares was a joke compared to my new reality. But by the next morning, a Saturday, I half believed it all had been a nightmare. The only thing that seemed real, really real, was the way the Andalite had of smiling with just his eyes. I woke when my mom started pounding on my door. "Jake, are you awake in there?" I was now. Yeah, I groaned. "On up." "Your friend Tobias is here." Tobias? What was Tobias doing here? "It's me," Tobias's voice. "Can I come in?" Sure." I sat up in my bed and blinked several times, trying to get my eyes unglued. The door opened. I heard Tobias say "thank you" to my mom. He was glowing. I swear, he was glowing. Not like he was radioactive or anything. I don't mean that. It's just that his eyes were shining bright and his face was one big grin, and he seemed to be tingling with energy, bouncing like he couldn't stand still. "I did it," Tobias said. I tried to get my hair to go in one direction by raking my fingers through it. "What are you talking about?" I was yawning when he answered. "I became dude." I stopped yawning. My mouth actually snapped shut. Dude is Tobias's cat. Huh? Tobias glanced around like there might be spies in the room. "I became dude, just like the Andalite said." I just stared. It was so amazing. It didn't hurt or anything. I was paying him and thinking about the whole thing last night, right? So I thought, why not give it a try? He was pacing back and forth, snapping his fingers, bursting with enthusiasm. Very unlike Tobias. I didn't even know how to begin, so I just made sure the door to my room was locked. Fortunately, my uncle was still asleep. Tobias has the most screwed up family I know. He never knew who his father was, and his mom just decided to leave him a few years ago. Since then, he'd been shuttled back and forth between his uncle here and his aunt, who lives on the other coast. His aunt and his uncle can't stand each other, and it's like Tobias is some burden they each try to shove off on the other. I get the feeling neither of them cares about Tobias. So there I was, just sitting on my bed, thinking about it, concentrating, thinking about becoming dude. I looked down at my hand. He grinned at me. "What do you think I saw, Jake?" I shook my head slowly. "I don't know." "I had fur, Jake, and I was growing claws. You should have seen the real dude. He went nuts. I had to put him outside before I could morph all the way. He clawed me up pretty good." Tobias stuck a sliced finger into his mouth. I swallowed hard. Okay, this was definitely crazy now. Tobias, is it possible you maybe just dreamed all this? Not a dream, he said. Now he was serious, Tobias again. The grin was gone. It's all true, Jake. All of it. His eyes met mine. I knew what he was saying. He had tried to pretend it was all a nightmare, too. But it was real. I looked away. I didn't want to start believing it had all been real. I wanted it all safely stored away in my head. Just another bad dream. Bad dreams should stay in your head, not come jumping out into real life. I just kept concentrating on changing, Tobias said, and in a few minutes I was not myself anymore. His eyes bored in on me. You have no idea what it's like, Jake. Being a cat is so... it's... I can't even describe it. You're so strong, for one thing. Just all this coiled power and the way you can move. You know what I did? I jumped onto my dresser 3 feet straight up in the air, and I landed like a feather. 3 feet. You know how high that is when you're a cat? It's like a person jumping maybe 30 feet straight up. He stopped suddenly and looked at me. You don't believe me, do you? He said. Look, Tobias, it's just that sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between something real and something you're just imagining or dreaming. You think I'm crazy. I considered for a minute. I don't know, Tobias. Let's review the facts. You say you turned into your own pet cat. Turned into an actual cat. Yes, I have to say that sounds crazy to me. Tobias nodded thoughtfully. He gave a little smile. I understand, Jake. You still don't want it to be true. What? You mean, do I want to believe that you can change yourself into a cat? And all the rest of it? Do I want to believe that Earth is being invaded by slimy slugs who live in people's brains and turn them into slaves? Do I want to believe that? Duh! No, I don't want to believe any of it. And how about the Andalite? He asked in a quiet voice. I hesitated. I don't know why, but I didn't want to just pretend the Andalite away. Tobias put his hand on my arm. Stand right there. What are you going to do? I'm going to help you decide whether it's real or not. Tobias, just wait, and don't scream or anything. So I waited. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Tobias just stood there. I glanced at his face. His eyes were different. The pupils weren't completely round anymore. I swear there was a reflective greenish light in them, and his mouth was protruding a little, puffing out. He was shrinking, growing smaller right before my eyes. The neck of his shirt was loose. His pants started scrunching up at the ankles. He was shriveling, and at the same time fur began to grow on his hands and neck and face. It was gray striped with black, just like dudes. I had this absurd desire to start giggling. Tobias was becoming a tabby cat. But I knew if I started giggling, I'd just keep on and never ever be able to stop. Tobias was more cat than human now. The pointed ears rose atop his head. The whiskers stuck straight out from beneath his delicate pink nose. He had dropped to all fours, clothing now half draped over him like so many rags. His tail twitched. Yes, his tail. I wondered if I would just drop dead from the lump that filled my throat, or from the jackhammer pounding of my heart. Then I wondered if I was still asleep. But if it was a dream, it was a really convincing one. I was standing there in my bedroom, staring down at a gray-black cat that less than 2 minutes earlier had been my friend, Tobias. And that's the end of chapter 7. If you have any comments or questions about the chapter, please ask away. If you're wondering, yes, I'm still doing the shot thing. It's just that it's been a long, hard day for me, long story short, and I'm actually drinking coffee instead of water, like usual when I film these. Yeah, so if you have some alcohol, my case sake, or if you don't drink alcohol and or if you're underage, get some water. I mean, coffee, depending on the time of day and how well you handle caffeine. Yeah, this was... So in the Animorphs series, Tobias is the first one that you actually see morphing, and if you're wondering, I did slightly edit, I think, one word, but that was because it was a typo in the book, and I was read through it a few times. I was like, yeah, yeah, that word just doesn't work. Oh, and before I take the shots, and, here's a new guide to my little kitty family. I was trying to get him in the shot, like in the background, but it just didn't really seem to work. And yeah, that's a little penguin hat. That's a really nightmare to wear. But that's getting into some technical stuff that I won't talk about now, because we're taking a shot to, a good chapter. I think I finally did figure out how to only do one shot of sake without being able to measure. So, until next video, goodbye.